Anna Sinclair. At my 33rd birthday party in Manhattan, my mother-in-law, Margaret Sinclair, whispered something into my husband's ear, and I saw the shift in his eyes. Before I could react, his slap sent me crashing to the floor. Stunned, I lay there as he turned to walk away until a slow chuckle escaped my lips. He froze, his face drained of color. You're listening to this story on Renvenge Zinnia, where raw truths are unveiled by those who live them. Before we begin, please subscribe and share where you're watching in the comments. I slammed my laptop shut as the bathroom door opened. Steam billowed out as Michael emerged, towel around his waist, his physique still striking at 35. His eyes, though, held that increasingly vacant look I'd been documenting for months. "Happy birthday, Anna," he said, the words rehearsed, hollow. He bent to kiss my cheek, his lips cool despite the hot shower. "Mom's excited about tonight." She must be, I thought, but replied with practiced warmth. "It's so generous of Margaret to arrange everything." My voice, honed in courtrooms to sway juries, didn't betray the ice forming in my chest. "What are you working on?" he asked, glancing at my closed laptop. "Just reviewing the Parker merger documents," I lied smoothly. "Even birthday girls don't get days off at Sterling and Grant." He nodded, accepting without question. When we met 5 years ago, he'd have teased me about my workaholic tendencies, maybe coaxed me back to bed. That Michael was gone, replaced by a polished automaton responding to his family's signals like a trained animal. As he dressed for his morning at the family office, I retreated to my walk-in closet in our Upper East Side penthouse, the one place without cameras. Margaret had installed the surveillance system last year during our renovation, a thoughtful security measure for her son and daughter-in-law. Only I knew about the tiny devices I'd found 3 months ago during a meticulous search. Only I knew I'd left them functional, feeding them a loop of routine activity whenever I needed privacy. Inside the closet, I pressed my fingertip against a near-invisible seam. A panel slid open, revealing a waterproof case with hard drives, a backup laptop, and 2 burner phones, my insurance, my weapon. For 3 years, I'd been the perfect Sinclair addition. Columbia Law graduate, rising star at New York's top corporate law firm, charitable foundation board member, and devoted wife to Michael Sinclair, heir to one of New York's oldest fortunes. The society pages adored us. Margaret paraded me at every gala like a prize showpiece. No one suspected that behind my flawless makeup and designer dresses, I was building a case to bring the Sinclair empire crashing down. It started with discrepancies in family business documents I helped Michael review, numbers that didn't add up, subsidiaries in countries with shady banking laws. Then came the odd meetings Michael returned from, more withdrawn, less decisive. The way Margaret whispered in his ear at family gatherings, shifting his demeanor instantly. I'd spent 3 years defending corporations against fraud. I knew what financial manipulation looked like. I knew psychological control, too. The day I found Michael staring blankly at a video from his cousin Daniel was when I began my secret investigation in earnest. That night, I bought the first burner phone with hidden cash. I inserted a micro SD card into my secure phone. The encrypted files held everything: bank transfers to offshore accounts, recordings of family meetings where they openly discussed conditioning Michael's responses, evidence of market manipulation, and bribes to federal officials. My fingers scrolled to the newest file, a photo from yesterday of Dr. Richard Langley, Michael's supposed childhood therapist, meeting Margaret at her Park Avenue townhouse. The same man referenced in documents as a behavioral consultant, paid $25,000 monthly from a Sinclair shell company. I checked my watch, 7:15 a.m., time to become Anna Sinclair again. I sealed the compartment and chose a tailored Armani suit for court. The Hudson case would wrap by noon, giving me time to change for my birthday celebration at Margaret's favorite rooftop restaurant, the Celestial Room. As I applied my makeup, I practiced my expressions: delighted surprise, gracious appreciation, devoted affection. The masks I'd worn for years while gathering evidence against those who'd hollowed out my husband and built a criminal empire behind a charitable facade. Michael appeared in the doorway, impeccably dressed in a custom suit, hair perfectly styled. Once seeing him like this would have quickened my pulse. Now I cataloged the changes: slightly constricted pupils, a micro delay before emotional responses, new tension in his jaw. "You look beautiful," he said mechanically. "Thank you, darling." I stood, adjusting his already perfect tie, searching his eyes for any flicker of the man I'd married. Nothing. "See you tonight. Don't let your mom go overboard with surprises." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "She just wants everything perfect for you." Perfect, the Sinclair's favorite word. Their perfect family, perfect business, perfect control. As I gathered my briefcase, my phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. "Wear the navy Gucci tonight. Michael loves you in that color." Another command disguised as motherly advice. I texted back gratitude, then chose the scarlet Valentino I'd saved for a special occasion. Small rebellions kept me sane while assembling my case. In the Uber to the courthouse, I reviewed my real casework, compartmentalizing as I'd learned. By day, I was Anna Sinclair, corporate defense attorney. My clients relied on me, and ironically, those skills made me devastating in building my case against the Sinclairs. At the courthouse steps, I checked my secure messaging app. My SEC contact confirmed receipt of my latest intelligence. "Moving on this next week," he wrote. "Need more from your source?" I smiled, typing back, "One final piece tonight." Margaret didn't know her elaborate birthday trap would become the Sinclair unmasking. I tucked my phone away, ascended the steps, my expression serene, my posture confident. Inside, I counted down the hours. The perfect facade was about to shatter, and I'd be there, phone in hand, capturing every damning moment. The celestial room shimmered above the Hudson River, its glass and steel catching the sunset in gold and crimson hues, fitting for a bloodletting disguised as a celebration. The restaurant had a 3-month wait list, but the Sinclair name secured the entire rooftop terrace. "Mrs. Sinclair, welcome." The maitre d' nearly bowed as our town car arrived. "Mrs. Margaret has been asking about you." "I'm sure she has," I murmured, accepting Michael's mechanical arm. He'd been silent during the ride, checking his watch as if timing his performance. The elevator rose smoothly to the rooftop. I centered myself, my scarlet Valentino hugging my body like armor, a silent declaration of war against Margaret's navy Gucci directive. Michael didn't notice my defiance, another sign of his detachment. The doors opened to an orchestrated tableau, crystal chandeliers suspended on invisible wires, white orchids, Margaret's signature, adorning every surface, and about 50 guests, all smiling with the practiced warmth of predators. "Happy birthday." The collective greeting washed over me, as artificial as the orchid's perfume. Margaret glided forward, resplendent in navy Chanel, her blonde bob gleaming under the chandeliers. At 58, she was striking, the grande dame of Manhattan society, her ruthlessness matched only by her skill at concealing it. "Anna, darling," she embraced me, her Hermès perfume enveloping me like chloroform. Her lips brushed my cheek as she whispered, "Navy would have complimented Michael better for the photos." "I wanted to surprise everyone," I replied, matching her steely warmth, "even on my birthday." Her eyes flashed, the first authentic response I'd seen in months. She recovered, linking her arm through mine to parade me through the celebration. "Everyone important is here," she announced, leading me past Manhattan's elite. The police commissioner, 2 state senators, a federal judge, 3 university presidents. I noted each face, cross-referencing my files of Sinclair connections. None of my law partners, no close friend from Columbia, no mentor from my first firm. The guest list was sanitized of anyone truly connected to me. Champagne, birthday girl? Daniel Sinclair, Michael's cousin and the family's legal fixer, appeared with 2 flutes. "Thanks, Dan," I accepted, not drinking. "Lovely to see you." "Wouldn't miss it," he replied, his Yale-educated drawl thin over something urgent. His eyes darted to the entrance, where a gray-haired man in a tailored charcoal suit was escorted in. "Excuse me a moment." I watched Dan intercept the newcomer, Dr. Richard Langley, the therapist whose practices extended beyond conventional treatment, paid monthly as a behavioral consultant. A server with canapes provided cover to drift closer to their conversation. "Timeline needs acceleration," Dan was saying back to the party. "Trustees won't extend again." "Pushing the protocol risks instability," Langley replied, his clinical tone unmistakable. "Conditioning takes time." "We don't have that luxury," Dan cut in. "Contractual obligations are clear. If he's not fully controlled by the disbursement date—" They noticed my proximity and pivoted to greetings. Langley's handshake was brief, his eyes assessing me clinically. "Mrs. Sinclair, happy birthday. You look radiant." "Thank you, Doctor. Langley. Michael mentioned you might attend." I lied. "It's been, 15 years since you worked with him?" His smile tightened. "On and off. The Sinclairs are more family than clients." "How fortunate," I replied, noting his slightly dilated pupils. He was nervous. Good. For the next hour, I circulated, playing my role while observing the room's dynamics. Margaret remained the epicenter, her laughter theatrical, her eyes tracking me. Whenever Michael approached, her attention intensified, like monitoring a lab experiment. Michael moved through the party like a sleepwalker, responding with programmed pleasantries. Twice I caught Langley watching us, making subtle notes on his phone. "Wonderful turnout," remarked Judge Callahan, a longtime Sinclair ally. "Margaret knows how to celebrate family." "Indeed," I agreed. "I'm surprised my law colleagues couldn't make it." "Exclusive guest list," he chuckled. "Margaret wanted this intimate." Intimate meant controlled. Vulnerability prickled my neck. This celebration was hermetically sealed. Anyone here would side with the Sinclairs if something happened to me. The party shifted to dinner, Margaret orchestrating seating with tactical precision. Michael to my right, her at the head, Langley across from me, his gaze clinically assessing our interactions. Margaret tapped her crystal glass, silencing the room. "Before we dine, a toast to my beloved daughter-in-law." She stood, commanding the room with practiced authority. 4 years ago, Michael brought home this brilliant, beautiful attorney, and I knew she was special. Her eyes met mine, warm on the surface, glacial beneath. Anna has become everything the Sinclair family values, loyal, discreet, committed to our legacy. The gathering murmured approval. I maintained my grateful smile, translating her message. "We own you, Anna." Margaret raised her glass. "May this 33rd year be transformative." The word hung like a promise, or a threat. As servers presented the first course, Margaret glided behind my chair, her manicured hands on my shoulders, a maternal gesture to onlookers, but I felt the predatory pressure. "Such a perfect evening," she murmured, "just for me. And after dinner, a special announcement about the family's future." Her fingers tightened slightly before she moved away, leaving her perfume and the sense of a trap about to spring. I glanced at Michael, his eyes fixed on his water glass, fingers tapping a pattern I'd documented, a behavior following Margaret's private talks. Whatever they planned was accelerating. The gift presentation would come after the main course, Margaret's chosen moment for her announcement. I touched the slim phone in my clutch, confirming it was ready to record. The federal agents I'd been working with were on standby, awaiting my signal. The first course arrived, oysters in a perfect circle. Margaret beamed from the table's head, raising her glass in another silent toast. I smiled back, lifting my untouched champagne. Let the games begin. The main course plates were cleared, leaving an expectant hush. Margaret nodded to the staff, who arranged wrapped gifts on a marble-topped table, wheeled to the terrace's center. All part of the spectacle, gifts I suspected were as empty as the smiles around me. "Before dessert," Margaret announced, commanding the room, "we must honor our birthday girl properly." Guests formed a perfect semicircle, smartphones raised. In past years, I might have felt uneasy as the center of attention. Tonight, I welcomed every camera. Michael guided me to the gift table, his hand firm against my back, a once warm touch, now mechanical. "Start with this," Margaret instructed, handing me a Tiffany blue box. A murmur of appreciation rippled through the crowd. I unwrapped it deliberately, revealing a platinum bracelet studded with diamonds. A beautiful handcuff. "It's lovely," I said, holding it up for photos. "Michael, help your wife," Margaret directed. As he fastened it, I felt its weight, another link in their chain. The performance continued through more gifts. A designer handbag, a weekend at their Hamptons estate, a donation in my name to the Sinclair Foundation. And now, Margaret's voice softened dramatically, our special announcement. She glided forward, her movement timed like choreography. Her Hermes perfume arrived before she did, wrapping around me like an invisible constrictor. The room stilled, all eyes on our tableau, Margaret, Michael, and me, arranged like chess pieces. Her hand rested on Michael's shoulder, fingers digging into precise pressure points I'd documented. "Anna has been a treasure to our family," she began, her voice honeyed with false warmth. Devoted, supportive, the perfect partner for Michael during these 4 critical years. 4 years, the exact duration for the trust disbursement. Her eyes gleamed as she leaned closer to Michael, lips nearly touching his ear. I activated my phone's recording with a discreet movement. "Remember your duty," she whispered, the words carrying in the hushed room. "Protect what's ours." I watched it unfold in slow motion. Michael's pupils constricted, his jaw slackened briefly before tightening, his left hand stilled. Then, in a flat tone I'd never heard, he said, "You've betrayed us." The room held its breath. Margaret stepped back, satisfaction in her eyes as her creation performed. "What do you mean, Michael?" I asked, my voice steady despite the electric anticipation. "We know about the investigation," he continued, each word programmed. "The files, the SEC contacts." Gasps rippled through the crowd as I'd anticipated. Margaret wanted witnesses to my betrayal to create a narrative before the federal case broke. What I hadn't fully anticipated was what came next. Michael's arm moved with shocking speed. The slap sound echoed across the terrace like a gunshot, followed by silence. The impact knocked me against the marble table. I tasted copper as my lips split, the cool floor pressing against my cheek. For 3 heartbeats, nothing moved. Manhattan's elite stood frozen, witnessing a fracture in the Sinclair facade. Then, as Margaret moved to spin her narrative, poor Michael pushed to the brink by his treacherous wife. Something unexpected happened. I laughed. It started small, a bubble of sound from my bloodied lips, then grew, resonating across the stunned gathering. I pushed myself up, Scarlet Valentino smeared with blood, and laughed. Clear, genuine laughter cutting through the artificial atmosphere. "Perfect timing, Margaret," I said, my voice carrying. Every smartphone was still raised, still recording. "You couldn't have scripted it better." Confusion clouded her composed features. This wasn't her scenario. The disgraced wife was supposed to cower, plead, or threaten weakly before being escorted out. "Michael," she snapped, "help your wife." "She's clearly unwell." But Michael stood motionless, horror dawning as the programming fractured. He stared at his hand as if it were someone else's. "What did I just—" he whispered, the vacant look receding. "Anna." I rose without assistance, dabbing my split lip with a linen napkin, blood blooming like a watercolor. "Check your phones," I addressed the crowd calmly. "You've just witnessed and recorded a perfect demonstration of the Sinclair conditioning program, documented in the files I've collected for years." I faced Margaret directly, savoring her cracking composure. 4 years, Margaret. That's the trust's requirement for Michael to access his grandfather's fortune. A stable marriage. But assault in front of witnesses complicates divorce proceedings, doesn't it? Understanding dawned in her eyes, followed by fear. A first. "You did this deliberately," she hissed. "You provoked us." "I didn't have to," I replied. "You've been conditioning Michael for years. I just waited and documented." I gestured to the crowd of shocked faces and raised phones. And now, so has everyone else. The pieces I'd assembled, financial fraud, psychological manipulation, control of Michael, were validated by their actions before the power structure they'd cultivated. "My phone is sending data packages to several agencies right now," I continued conversationally, "including evidence of how Dr. Langley helped condition Michael to specific triggers." I nodded toward the therapist, now deathly pale. "The physical response programming was effective, wouldn't you say, doctor?" A news alert chimed from someone's phone, then another. My dead man's switch had activated when my phone's GPS registered the assault, sending my evidence package to the SEC, FBI, and select media like the New York Times. Margaret's empire wasn't just cracking, it was imploding in real time before the society she'd manipulated for decades. As I stood, blood on my lips, triumph in my heart, I knew there was no going back. "You can't possibly—" Margaret began, but froze as her phone chimed with the same alert, rippling through the crowd. Michael stood paralyzed, staring at his hand, horror dawning as his programming broke. "Anna, I didn't mean to. I don't know why." His voice cracked, genuine emotion breaking through. "I know you didn't," I said softly, addressing him directly for the first time in months. "That's exactly my point." I turned to the stunned audience, Manhattan's elite who'd been the Sinclair's shield and sword. The blood on my lip gave me undeniable authority. "For those checking your phones, yes, that alert is about the Sinclair family," I confirmed, my courtroom voice clear. "What you've witnessed is the culmination of a 4-year investigation into one of Manhattan's most sophisticated criminal enterprises." Judge Callahan's face went ashen. Senator Brooks's wife tugged him toward the exit. Phones buzzed with headlines: "Sinclair family under federal investigation, Manhattan's philanthropic dynasty accused of massive fraud." The New York Times had moved fast, publishing my evidence. Social media was exploding. The Sinclair mystique was unraveling. Margaret tried to regain control. "Anna's been under tremendous pressure," she began, feigning concern. "We've worried about her mental health." "Shall we discuss the surveillance system installed in our home?" I countered. "Or the sedatives in my tea on late work nights? I've had blood tests documenting them for months." A new murmur rippled through the crowd. Her calculated gaslighting was familiar to many in Manhattan's elite circles. I turned to Langley, paralyzed with indecision. "Doctor, Langley has a choice tonight," I announced. "The FBI will be interested in his records of the conditioning program. But," I paused, ensuring he listened, "I'm prepared to recommend immunity for his full testimony about the methods and who authorized them." Langley's eyes widened at the lifeline. "The same applies to anyone here," I continued. "Those who come forward voluntarily will be viewed differently from those awaiting subpoenas." The Sinclair alliance fractured faster than I'd anticipated. Small groups formed, whispering, alliances shifting. Michael looked at me, his eyes clearer than in months, the programming disrupted by shock. "How long have you known?" he asked, barely audible. 3 years, I replied quietly. "Small inconsistencies in your behavior after family meetings, then the vacant episodes. The final piece was Langley's name in the payment records." "I didn't want to hurt you," he whispered, anguish breaking through. "I know," I said, meaning it. "That's why I built this case instead of leaving. You weren't the only victim, Michael." Margaret, seeing her control slip, made a desperate attempt. "This is absurd. Michael, tell them." But Michael was staring at the blood on my lip, a terrible recognition dawning. "You did this to me," he said to his mother, his voice strengthening. "The sessions with Dr. Langley as a kid, the special summer programs. This isn't the first time you've made me—" He couldn't finish, horror washing over him. The elevator doors opened, revealing two suited men surveying the scene with professional detachment. Perfect timing. I recognized my FBI contacts. "Gentlemen, several people here are eager to make statements," I noted. The evidence I'd gathered wasn't just files on secure servers. It was unfolding across the rooftop as decades of manipulation and fraud unraveled. Margaret stood at the center, her empire crumbling, her mask of perfection shattered. The FBI agents moved efficiently, securing exits while introducing themselves. Agent Torres, my contact for months, gave me a subtle nod as he approached Margaret. "Mrs. Sinclair, we have a warrant to seize your electronic devices and documents," he stated, presenting the paperwork. Margaret's hand trembled as she took it, her eyes scanning for an escape clause. Finding none, she turned to Daniel, who was backing away, already calculating his exit strategy. "This is absurd," she insisted, her voice losing its edge. "Do you know who I am?" "That's precisely why we're here," Torres replied. The elegant birthday celebration turned chaotic. Servers stood frozen, champagne bottles in hand, as Manhattan's elite retreated. Judge Callahan spoke urgently into his phone. Senator Brooks was pulled away by his wife. Phones buzzed with headlines. Sinclair Empire accused of psychological manipulation, massive fraud allegations. The Sinclair mystique collapsed in real time. Margaret tried one last time to control the narrative, addressing the scattering guests. "This is a terrible misunderstanding, a family dispute misrepresented." Her voice cracked. The police commissioner, laughing at her jokes moments ago, cut her off. "We'll speak tomorrow through counsel." The abandonment began, the powerful figures who'd protected the Sinclairs recalculating their exposure. Nearby, Michael collapsed into a chair, his breathing ragged. The psychological walls around his authentic self were crumbling. "The summer programs at the lake house," he muttered, eyes unfocused. "The lessons with Dr. Langley, headaches when I questioned family decisions." I approached cautiously, unsure of his stability, yet feeling a mix of vindication and concern despite the sting on my face. "Michael," I said softly, kneeling beside him, keeping a safe distance. "The conditioning is breaking down. It'll be disorienting." His eyes found mine, clearer than in years. "I hurt you," he whispered, horror washing over his face as he reached toward my lip, stopping short. "I'd never, but I did." "You were programmed to respond to triggers," I explained. Margaret's whisper activated a response that wasn't yours. Across the room, Langley was in conversation with the second FBI agent, his clinical detachment gone, replaced by nervous self-preservation. "How much do you remember?" I asked Michael. He pressed his palms to his temples. "Fragments, sessions at the lake house, words repeated under medication, punishments when I resisted." His voice broke. "They've done this since I was 10, my own family." The realization pained him, his body curling forward. Margaret, despite the FBI agent beside her, tried to intervene. "Michael, darling, don't listen to her," she called, her voice shrill. "She's turned you against us after all we've done for you." "After all you've done to him," I corrected, rising to face her. "The evidence includes recordings of conditioning sessions, Margaret, where you instructed Langley on behaviors to suppress in your son." Her facade shattered, the naked truth silencing the room. Michael stood shakily, years of programming warring with emerging clarity. "My weakness was wanting my own life," he said, each word strengthening him. "To study art instead of finance? To marry for love?" His eyes found mine. Was any of it real between us? Or was I just following a script? The question pierced me. Despite my anger, I couldn't twist the knife. "The beginning was real," I answered honestly, "before they intensified the conditioning. That's why I stayed. I saw glimpses of the real you, enough to know you were a victim too." Outside, police lights reflected off the Hudson. More agents arrived with evidence response teams. Margaret was read her rights, her posture still regal despite her crumbling empire. Daniel negotiated, calculating early cooperation. Langley sat alone, scribbling a statement, glancing at Michael with possible regret. I stood at a crossroads. My vengeance was complete. The evidence would ensure justice for the fraud, manipulation, and abuse. I could walk away, leave Michael to navigate the wreckage. But as I watched him struggle, I saw myself in his disorientation. We'd both lived double lives under the Sinclairs' toxic influence. I can help you understand what they did, I offered, surprising myself. I've documented the techniques, the triggers. It might help your recovery. Michael looked up, vulnerability and hope warring with shame. After what I did, why would you help me? I touched my split lip, feeling the sting. Because unlike your family, I can distinguish between the puppet and the puppeteers. 6 months later, in a federal courthouse in Manhattan, Margaret Sinclair was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison for fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy. Stripped of her designer clothes, she wore a prison jumpsuit, her regal demeanor a hollow shell. Her legal team had collapsed. Daniel turned state's evidence immediately, prioritizing self-preservation. Prominent attorneys withdrew as the evidence's depth became clear. Margaret's empire was dismantled. The Sinclair Foundation's assets were seized, and $420 million in misappropriated funds were traced, redirected to restitution for victims under the trust's ethical clauses. Margaret spent her final days in court isolated, her former allies like Judge Callahan, under investigation himself, and Senator Brooks abandoning her. She would live out her years in obscurity, her name synonymous with disgrace. Dr. Richard Langley, in exchange for immunity, provided damning testimony against Margaret, detailing the conditioning techniques used on Michael since age 10. His records confirmed the systematic abuse, ensuring Margaret's conviction. However, his career was ruined. His license was revoked, and he faced civil lawsuits from other Sinclair victims. Langley relocated to a small town, living quietly under a new name, his clinical detachment replaced by the weight of his complicity. Over the next 6 months, I stood by Michael as he underwent intensive deprogramming at a specialized facility in upstate New York. I visited weekly, not just as a former wife, but as a partner in his recovery, sharing my documentation of the conditioning to aid his therapists. Each visit revealed more of the man I'd fallen in love with, thoughtful, introspective, grappling with guilt over actions that weren't truly his. I don't know who I am without their directives, he confessed during a session in the facility's garden, spring blooming around us. Even my love for you, was it mine or theirs? I took his hand, the first physical contact since the slap. It was yours in the beginning. We can find that again. I resigned from Sterling and Grant, unable to defend corporations after seeing Power's corruption. Instead, I founded the Freedom Mind Legal Foundation, focusing on cases of psychological manipulation and financial exploitation. Michael, as he recovered, began contributing, sharing his experience to help others recognize coercive control. The authentic Michael emerged, someone who loved sketching, who laughed at my bad puns, who wanted a life built on choice, not programming. On the day Margaret was sentenced, Michael and I stood outside the courthouse. He looked different. Casual jeans, a tentative smile, his eyes clear. "The trustees approved restitution," he said. "My shares going to your foundation. It's what the real me would have wanted." I squeezed his hand. "Thank you, Michael." We'd both been changed by the Sinclairs, but in the wreckage, we found something real. "I want to rebuild with you," he said, vulnerability raw. "If you'll have me." I nodded, tears stinging. I never stopped loving the real you. We moved to a small house in Brooklyn, far from Manhattan's elite circles, and rebuilt our marriage step by step. I led my foundation, advocating for victims like us, while Michael pursued art therapy, channeling his pain into creativity. The slap, the pain, the betrayal, they were scars, but they didn't define us. Together, we forged a legacy of liberation, proving that even the deepest wounds could heal with time, truth, and love. The Sinclair saga wasn't just about exposing corruption, it was about reclaiming our authentic selves. With every case my foundation took, every sketch Michael created, we built something Margaret never had, a life of freedom, not control. That was our justice. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.